Welcome. We are fewer in number than normal. We have some apologies, and I'll take those in a moment. But it would be a good idea if we actually just went round to say who we are, because there are one or two people here who I don't recognise. And we're very well represented with councillors, particularly this afternoon, so that's very good. Anyway, Michael Metcalfe, I'm from the Church of England Committee, and I'm the chair of SACRE.
My name is Gail, and I'm the advisor to SACRE, commissioned by SEC through Entrust, the trading arm of SEC. I run my own company, and I've been commissioned to support you.
Committee. I'm probably the only one present this afternoon.
Can everybody hear?
Oh, sorry, did you want me to? Sorry. Judy Wyman. I'm on the Education Committee. I'm a retired head teacher. And what I said was I'm probably the only one on Education Committee here this afternoon.
Judy is a member of Committee C.
My name's Paul Northcott. I'm County Councillor for Newcastle Rural. I'm a Cabinet Support Member here at Stafford County Council and former male model.
Oh, follow that then. Not a former male model, no. County Councillor Mike Wilcox, representing Burntwood South.
County Councillor Philip Atkins, representing Uttoxeter Rural.
I'm Gabby Oldfield. I represent the Quakers.
Paul Snape, Chairman of the County Council. I represent Cannock Town. I'm a Catholic and I trained for 6 years to be a Catholic priest, but then didn't take the vocation.
I'm Amy. I'm representing the Salvation Army. I work for the local Salvation Army in Stafford.
And I'm Simon, from Member and Democratic Services.
We're very grateful for Simon's support to SACRE, who had prepared the papers, the agenda for today. Welcome again. Just to give you the kind of legal constitutional situation, SACRE consists of 4 separate groups or committees, and each committee is represented here this afternoon, even if it's just by one person. And that means that we are fully quorate. It only needs one person to be present from each group for our terms of reference to be quorate. So that's good. We are up and running. May I have the apologies, Simon, please?
Yes, so quite a long list, unfortunately. So we have apologies from Linda Goodwin, Julie Thompson, Sam Kerwin, Sam Phillips, Lauren Nicholson-Ward, Vicky Longson, Zoe Cahalan, Vicky Priestley, Councillor Kath Perry, and Claire Tomlinson.
And that confirms, I think, the name Cahalan. I wonder whether it was Callahan, but it's Cahalan. Okay. Is there anybody here at the SACRE meeting for the first time? Any of the councillors for the first time? No, okay. Good, welcome then. If anybody wishes to declare any other business not on the agenda, could they do so now, please? Okay. All right, move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. These have been distributed. There are 2 places where the word SACRE is spelt scare. And Simon has had this pointed out to him by Judy and has prepared a formal set of minutes with these corrections in. So they're not exactly the ones that you've got in front of you. But maybe see if there are any other corrections, please. Anything on page 1? Amy?
Yeah, the minor amendment, it's saying that it's going to change the correct spelling to the wrong spelling.
Change the word, so that should be round the other way.
Yes.
Actually, it is right. It looks wrong, but it's rethink RE.
Rethink RE.
Oh.
It's meant to be.
Rethinker. was the word that I typed in,
And it should be rethink.
and it should be rethink RE.
I stand corrected then.
We did notice that on the previous minutes, didn't we? Yeah, that's what it was about. Anything else, page 1? Page 2. This is just for correctness. Gabby.
Yeah, maybe you explained that last time when I wasn't here, and if you did, I apologise. The Pattingham St Chad's school applied for a quality mark.
Yes.
What does that involve and what is it?
Well, that's in a sense a matter arising rather than a correction.
Yeah, I'm not, it's just a question.
This is just
I don't understand what it is.
This is just to give us an approval for these being a correct record.
And then we'll address that one in
We'll come to that in a moment. Anything on page 2 that needs correcting? Anything on page 3 that needs correcting? Anything on page 4 or 5 or 6? This is just a formality. And page 7. May I have your agreement then that these be signed as a true record with the small corrections indicated? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Moving on now to matters arising, there is one item that's actually noted here on the minutes, which is identified as paper 4A, or item 4A. And this is simply to give you, the SACRE members, a sight of the altered text for this particular page in the agreed syllabus, following on from a bit of tidying up and a bit of editing of it. So this is just really to notify you that this is what is now in the front of the agreed syllabus. But do ask questions about it if you wish to. Basically, it's the first part of it is very much what we had in the original 2016 syllabus, and then there's the note on worldviews below, which took account of discussion that we had at the final meeting of the agreed syllabus conference. Okay. Going back to the minutes then, now is the time to raise any points that you wish to from the minutes. Anything on page 1, which I think is pretty routine. On page 2, now we can take your question, Gabby, about the quality mark at St Chad's Pattingham. This is an official award. When I say official, it's validated by RE Today, I think. Is it? Or is it the... it's some official body, isn't it?
It's an RE quality mark body, which is separate from
it's a separate
RE
body,
Today.
that's right.
Yeah.
And it awards a gold, a platinum, a gold,
Gold, silver or bronze.
Or bronze category of award. It's fairly rigorous, and the school has to submit documentation and go through a kind of test to see whether it's delivering what it says it's delivering. And it's really a very good sign that a school is giving high quality RE in depth and across all the age groups. It costs something like £450 for a school to enter to see if it can qualify. And there are various ways in which you can prepare for the test. It is now a recognised, if you like, sign of quality. Does that explain enough for you? Yes, thank you. Do you want to say any more, Mary? On page 2, anything else? I just noticed that Mary had attracted a large number of governors in the previous paragraph under continuous professional development. And this is through governor development, governor training in general, but because of her links, she's able to promote awareness of and support for RE through these meetings and through these responsibilities that she has. So to get 200 leaders from the schools joining an update webinar where RE was discussed, I mean, that is good going for the county. I think we want to congratulate Mary and commend her for that. Okay, now anything else people wish to pick up on page 2 that's not on the agenda? Anything on page 3? Judy, again.
In the middle of the page, underneath the table, the paragraph beginning Sacre heard that, at the end it says data provided suggests that only 53 pupils had sat at a religious studies exam in Staffordshire. This number was being challenged and confirmation was awaited.
I'm still waiting confirmation. I have been emailing SEC and Interest, but a little slow on the replies at the moment. I will keep badgering.
Thank you. Can I, while I've got the mic on, go right to the bottom of page 3, and it talks about Sacre to collaborate with its regional hub. Where is that?
The region. Go on, Mary.
The regional hubs are currently being set up as per the Sacre briefing. We have got another hub that is working, but it's not a NASCA hub. We've got a NATRE hub at the moment, so we're hoping that that will subsume into the other hub, because to have 2 or 3 hubs is too many.
Yes.
So we are meeting as a hub. At the moment, it's called NATRE, National Association of Teachers of Religious Education.
Where's it based?
That's an online meeting,
Oh.
and usually run by one of the schools over in Lichfield.
Thank you.
And I know Sarah, who runs the meeting, has been in contact with Michael to express her views about religious education. So we are in contact with a hub, but it is not necessarily the NASCA hub yet.
Thank you.
If I may dare to add to what Mary has just said, I think NASCA is working with NATRE to develop these hubs. It isn't setting up its own independent series of hubs, but there is a lot of overlap of personnel. And Claire Clinton, who is the national promoter of clubs, is also a member of the NASCA exec. And this is why there may be a bit of confusion here. It may come under reporting about the activities of NASCA, but there is, I think, a single system of hubs. And Mary is quite right. At the moment, these are online. They aren't based in a particular centre. They're more questions for exchange and support and video conferencing and things like that. Anything else on page 3? Page 4, that was more mostly about the agreed syllabus conference. We're going to, I think we'll delay the report on the process, if we may, Simon, until we get to the launch, if that's okay. Anything about the agreed syllabus. And then over on the page, final page, yes, Gabby.
Yeah, can I just ask A-level and AS-level RE teachers, are they all specialist teachers? And is it possible to get enough to have specialist teachers? Because I've heard from a school in Stafford that for quite a number of subjects, they can't get specialist teachers. So I wonder what the situation in RE is. Suspected that.
It's very similar. It's a similar, in the fact that they try and get a humanities teacher at least to do RE.
Yeah.
If somebody who's got some knowledge of historical facts might be able to address the RE issues, and that's the way they're going about it. Some schools do have a number of specialists, which is praiseworthy, but they're usually Church of England schools or Catholic schools.
I think what Gabby was saying, you asked about A-levels, I think, particularly, was it, Gabby? I think it's very difficult for a generalist humanities teacher to tackle RE at A-level,
Yeah,
religious
I can
studies at
imagine
A-level.
that, yeah.
They just have not got the expertise. Yes, Councillor.
Do all these figures include Catholic schools? Because until the 1st of January, I was a governor, Cardinal Griffin had been for 13 years. Until about I did A-level at RE, so I know the complexities of it all. It's for an outsider, it would be difficult to teach.
Yes, all the numbers we include in the data includes Catholic schools, Church of England schools, community schools. They're all there together.
It's just that Cardinal Griffin, every year, we put 150 in for a GCSE at RE, because it's mandatory in a Catholic school. So if you said only had 53 applicants, then by our numbers at Cardinal Griffin, we're out.
It might be that some of the schools are academies, and therefore the local authority doesn't always receive all of the information about academies.
Cardinal Griffin's grant maintained, it's not the academy. Okay. It will be from Easter, that's why I've resigned, but
okay.
yeah.
Thank you for that information, though. It's interesting to note.
Yeah. Okay, we move on then to item 5, update on key issues, and we hand over to Mary.
So, this is page 12 in your agenda. The first part talks about me as being your advisor, and I've been commissioned, as you know, through Staffordshire County Council in a trust to carry on with the work. I am uncertain whether I will be continuing past the financial year, because despite asking and requesting whether they still require my services, I've unable to receive a reply. Now, I know Simon has tried as well and not had a reply as yet. So we're just asking. If not, it may be that this is my last meeting. It might be otherwise, but I cannot presume anything in the world of education today.
This is a serious matter, and can I bring it to the attention of the councillors here for this to be taken forward? I don't know what the blockage is. Simon, do you have any comment?
Sorry, no. I've got absolutely no information on that, I'm afraid.
Judy.
I wonder where your situation is, considering the changes that are happening between Entrust and SCC, because I would have thought that would impact on the commissioning for yourself.
I've had one meeting, and they asked me would I be willing to continue, so that they had that in the melting pot. And I had that meeting, and I said yes, I would. But I've emailed since to say, was there an outcome from that meeting, a resolution? But again, I've not had any replies. So I've emailed again.
I wonder whether anybody there knows.
It's a possibility, yes.
We hope, but we have to wait.
Yeah, it's just have to wait.
But I agree with you, Chair, that any pressure that can be brought to bear on at least it, if not commissioned through Entrust, maybe it should be commissioned the other way around. As long as there's continuity of the support you can give, that I think is what we're looking for.
Councillor Paul, would you be able to process this at all?
I think after the meeting, myself and Simon will have a chat, and we'll go from there. If that's all right with you, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And it might be the answer is there, it just hasn't arrived, might it?
I do have meetings with Entrust, and next time I go, I'll ask.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, I think it's SEC and Entrust talking together and putting it on their agenda. And I know they've got really more important things possibly to sort out at the moment. I agree with you.
Well, more important,
To
I think.
them. Okay.
Mary, carry on, please.
So the next part, continuous professional development. As you know, previous to COVID, we were running regular courses for teachers, which were well attended. Then we had COVID and we went online doing a few courses. They weren't very well attended either at that point, because people were more concerned about getting the basics of remote education sorted with maths and English. But we have resumed, and I ran an autumn course, as you can see, in November, and 20 schools booked on, which was commendable. All of them expressed an interest in the new agreed syllabus and wanted to know all about it. Also, through the Governor information packs, I've been, as you know, as Michael has just referenced, I've been able to reach many schools, over 200 at least, and that's at least 200. And everybody is happy to discuss religious education and to put it on their agendas, and I give them questions to ask as link governors of the leaders of religious education. I mean, I don't think I could give them any more information other than stand beside them and nudge them to say the words. I also do link governor training. So when I do the link governor training, I also bring up the fact that besides safeguarding, you could be asking questions about religious education. And what has happened is, as a result, high schools, and particularly those who are not faith schools, are now coming to me saying, is it true we have to teach RE after all these years? And these are not faith schools. They know what the parameters of their curriculum. But it's good because we've enlightened people and governors are asking these questions. So as a result, we've got a higher interest from high schools and middle schools concerning the teaching of religious education and religious studies in schools. So continuous professional development is having an impact wider than we actually thought. So that's good for Staffordshire. Then with regard to the West Hill project, which is a project that...
Actually, Mary, do you want to say something about the Church of England conference?
Oh, yes, thank you. Then I attended a Church of England conference last Friday, which is at the bottom of page 12, and this was in London, and this was the 5th conference, the Church of England National Conference. There's been a 3-year gap, as you would expect, because of COVID, and the title of the conference was Flourishing Together. There were well over 500 delegates at this conference. You couldn't actually move in the room. It was I found it a bit overwhelming, having not been to a conference quite a long time, and then to land up in a room with over 500 people. The keynote speeches were held at a Union Chapel in Islington, which was a magnificent building full of atmosphere, and there were workshops nearby in St Mary's Magdalene Academy. And the keynote speakers that we had were Gillian Keegan, the Secretary of State, the Right Honourable Lord Boateng, Dame Rachel de Souza, the Children's Commissioner, and the Most Reverend Stephen Cottrell.
Archbishop of York.
Archbishop of York. So this was a very prestigious keynote speeches, as you can imagine. But the overall message for us, the delegates, was that in order for the young people to flourish in modern Britain, they need an education that champions diversity, equality and inclusion, which made me feel quite good and humbled, because that is what our agreed syllabus actually also states. Alongside high-quality religious studies or religious education, which encompasses many of those aspects. And they say all of this can be achieved if leaders, and this goes back, I suppose, to the professional development I was talking about, if leaders at all levels, and especially the higher levels, can design and implement a curriculum which champions those aspects and incorporates them in their school vision. I also do training on school visioning for schools, and I always look at those school visions and mission statements, and we talk about these aspects. So I was quite pleased about that. Then after the keynote speakers, we all walked over. It seemed like miles, but it was only half a mile, I think, to the Mary Magdalene Academy, and there we took part in a series of workshops. I took part in one called The Role of the Primary Subject Lead. And this one I found particularly interesting because it talked a lot about the way an agreed syllabus could be delivered within schools. And they said they were advocating within the assessment section that instead of assessing children at the end of each key stage, it would be more prudent to assess children at the end of each year group, which is what we've been doing since 2016. They said at the conference that this had never happened before, and this was new, revolutionary from this day forward. So I didn't say anything. I did say I went to see this speaker after and I said, well, have you seen the 2016 agreed syllabus for Staffordshire, which we did that, but people said at the beginning it was not appropriate. But we stuck to our guns and we've continued. And she said she would take a look. So,
Oh, wow.
so that was good. Then I went to one on the interconnected curriculum, and this talked particularly about whole school reading of religious texts, echo reading, model reading, and how you can use religious studies to do all that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be done as a literacy lesson. You can incorporate religious texts. Again, I was quite pleased about that because I'd done a special unit for Staffordshire schools on whole class reading through religious poetry. And I trained some of our teachers on that and set up a whole project. So all in all, after being at this conference, I felt that Staffordshire was actually as up to date as we could be, and that the agreed syllabus was in line with national discussions and national thought processes. So well done, everybody, because we can't do it without each other, can we?
Well done, Mary. We'll have a pause there if anybody would like to ask anything for Mary about that conference. Although it was very specifically a Church of England conference, it was quite inclusive and outward-looking.
Hence the word flourishing in the inclusive environment. If it had all just been very religious, it wouldn't have been as inclusive, would it, as it should have been. And lots of children came and sang and danced and shared their love of music and prayer, and it was a inspiring day. Tiring and inspiring. So, the next part is on page 12 and over onto page 13, and that's the continuing of the Explore, Engage, Reflect West Hill Legacy project. So this continues, and we have 2 dates where the MIAS team, the Minority Ethnic Achievement Service, will be working alongside YouthNet to take part in, or to have children take part in workshops. So we've got one at Talk Pits and one at Bignell End, and we're hoping at Baldwin's Gate as well in the very near future. And we've got 7 other schools that have been contacted, and we're just waiting to see what dates we can give to those.
Just for the record, I think that should be talk with an E at the end.
Oh, it should be.
Not talks.
Yeah, talk.
Pits,
That's me. Yep.
Up in the north. And one of our members, Sam Phillips, is very often not able to be with us because she is very active as the leader of YouthNet in work with schools on afternoons during the school terms. And she's one of the main contributors to these conferences, these events.
And she works alongside Maddie Bell doing similar work, but Maddie Bell is on maternity leave, I believe, at the moment.
Right. Yes,
So.
yes, that's right.
Then the next section is the workforce data. You might remember that we looked at the school workforce census data over schools, and in that database they have to declare to the DFE how many hours they use in school to teach religious education or religious studies in high schools and middle schools. And we were a little bit horrified to note that many schools said they didn't deliver any RE or RS, religious studies. So I looked at all their websites, I have visited the schools, I've had conversations with the schools, and much of it was just an admin error, that the admin staff didn't understand that if the school taught religious studies, they didn't realise it was called religious education. So I've been clarifying that with the admin staff. So I've had 200 clerks on a webinar, and I have tried to make it very clear to them that they need to actually fill in the database correctly. And if they're filling it incorrectly for religious education, we could be filling it incorrectly for history or geography. So that we've raised the awareness of that. So that's had an impact as well. And many of the schools reporting no religious studies were actually Catholic schools. And I know that is absolutely... So we've tried to redress that at the moment.
We've got to go
Well, perhaps this is one of the things that's happening in schools. There are so many reports to give, forms to fill in and so on, that you delegate, and perhaps the person to whom it's delegated isn't quite up to what they're supposed to be doing. It's a part of the pressure, I think, in schools.
The next section is not for me to talk about, but it's for our clerk, Simon, which is the Freedom of Information request.
Thank you, Mary. So, very quickly, at the beginning of the year, we received an email from NASACRE with a Freedom of Information request, just with regards to, and if I can use their own words, it's the focusing again on the SACRE funding following previous report of 2021, and they're asking for us to let them know how much money is allocated to SACRE to do the work, and obviously for the agreed syllabus as well. What I didn't tell Mary is after she'd filled that form in for me, they emailed to say, don't worry about it, we sent you the wrong form. However, when they sent the correct form through, everything you'd filled in was the same. So I didn't have to come back and ask you for any more information. And we were able to get that returned round within 2 days, which is pretty good for a Freedom of Information request. But it's just focusing on the budget that's allocated, how many meetings we've had, how many were quorate, the attendance. Obviously, we're an unusual situation today, but in the past it's normally well attended. So in terms of our response, it was all very positive. So hopefully there'll be nothing coming back from that.
Just add to what Simon said, the government have accepted the principle that I think it's 2% of the central aggregated something or other should be allocated to RE within the local authority. And because of this, it's been possible for the first time to begin to see how well different local authorities are performing over against what their benchmark would be, so to speak. And we're very pleased to say that Staffordshire comes out quite well on this freedom of information exercise. The reverse side of this, of course, looking at the national picture, is that a number of authorities are not supporting their SACREs to anywhere near the same extent. And they have some difficulty in doing their work. And in carrying out their responsibilities. So, well done Staffordshire SACRE. Thank you.
Oh, Sean.
Hello.
Sean. Sean Miles.
Yes. Is she the Roman Catholic?
No, it's Church of England. Sean
yes.
Miles.
Is he new?
No.
Sean, welcome. Is this your first meeting?
No.
Not quite.
It shows how much you remember, Michael.
Oh.
But thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. Apologies for my late arrival.
We're just about finishing agenda item 5. Any member like to follow up any of the reporting that Mary or Simon have done? Update on current activities. Things are alive and well, and we just hope that Mary will be in position to continue her good work into the next year.
Can I add one thing? It's not in the report, but it's an oral part. Sean, who's just arrived, his school is applying for the RE quality mark. I'm right there, aren't I, Sean?
Yes, the application is pretty much done. It just needs to be submitted, so yes.
So Sean is from St Luke's Church of England School at Cannock.
Ah,
Yeah.
well done, well done.
Yes. And Sean and I have worked together for a number of years on religious education aspects, and we're seeing the fruits of your labour.
Which is a report from NASACA on SACRE. There are various pronunciations and dialects around the country about these acronyms. Only today or yesterday it was, I think, I received the latest NASACA or SACRE briefing, which I think will be placed, will be circulated and to all members of SACRE. And could I commend it to SACRE? This is what it looks like, though it'll have a bit of colour to it. And it's full of quite important material, this edition. And I'm just going to mention a few of these here now. The first is that NASCA is having its 30th anniversary in May, and it's celebrating 30 years of SACREs, looking for SACREs for the future is its theme. It's going to be held at a prestigious venue in London, the Fishmongers Hall, and it will be followed by a virtual conference set of workshops from the 5th to the 15th of June. And these have proved enormously popular as a follow-on from the actual conference and the meeting together in that way. I shall have to be there myself, and other members of SACRE are invited to go along as well. At the moment, there is a maximum of 2 people per SACRE, and there is a cost, of course, plus the travel costs, but I'm sure our budget can be elastic if people have a desire to go. And I think perhaps I'd quite like the membership as a whole to be given the opportunity to volunteer to go, because I think this will be quite a special occasion. There will be elections for the committee. There are 5 places on the committee to be voted for. And if anybody has a desire to be involved at a national level, this is one way of doing it. And particularly, there's an election for the vice chair. There isn't a vice chair to the committee at the moment. More relevantly, perhaps for everybody here, every SACRE in the country is being invited to send in memorabilia over the last 30 years of their SACRE's life as a kind of celebration of what's happened, what's been done, and they'll be making a kind of video loop of a selection of these to be shown during the conference. You can read it all up in the download yourself in the briefing. And they're also inviting awards for people. This is really quite invidious in a way, for SACREs to nominate. I'll try and read out what it actually says here. We are celebrating 30 years as an organisation. As part of that, we'd like to recognise SACRE members who have played a special part in the life of your SACRE over the last 30 years.
That's you and me then, Michael.
Yes. We're inviting SACREs to nominate with a photo of the nominee and your reasons for selecting them. Kindly nominate your members, past and present, under the following 2 categories: the most active SACRE member and a SACRE member who has made a significant impact in your area. So perhaps we'll need to put out a message about that in due course, but I think we ought to record it in the minutes that this is going on. And there's a time limit of 5 p.m. on Friday, the 12th of May. So we've got some time ahead. But this is obviously going to be quite a moment in the life of the National Association. I was involved in the 10th anniversary and the 20th anniversary, and I shall have a small speaking role at the 30th anniversary as well. So I shall be there, but it would be very good if we could have others there as well. Now, secondly, on activities of NASCA, everybody will know that a short while ago a white paper was issued about education development, which led to a schools bill that was brought before Parliament. Because of the various upheavals that have been taking place and developments more widely, the schools bill has now been dropped, and that is not going through Parliament. However, all the evidence that we have from the DFE and the Regional Schools Commissioner is that the intention of academisation to be achieved by the end of this decade, by 2030, is going ahead and will proceed. And certainly my own diocese is working to that agenda. You might wish to know that a former chairman of NASCA, Paul Sawley, who's an academic at Edge Hill University, has produced a paper, there's a link to it in this copy of the SACRE briefing, looking ahead to how SACREs might function in an academised world. So that's quite an important think piece, if you like. Yes, Councillor.
Just to say that the Catholic Archdiocese of Birmingham still want to go ahead with academisation. They believe it should happen a lot sooner than 2030, even though there's now no legal responsibility. And they are pushing ahead. Some of the decisions they're trying to make, we've got schools academising 50 miles apart. It's been made basically by the religious education team from the Archdiocese, and they're not listening to schools in any way.
You're absolutely right, and we are discouraging in the Diocese of Lichfield federations or any kind of intermediate organisations, because that's people just putting their heads in the sand. It is going ahead, and we have to be ready for it, and sooner rather than later. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah.
There are one or two Catholic MATs that are refusing to join up with a partner that has been chosen for them, and they're standing out against that.
I think there's going to be quite a lot of horse trading going on.
Just to say the legislation, the Archdiocese doesn't have the authority to say who to go with, and there are legal cases going through. Some schools have gone for judicial review at the moment.
It was about the freedom of information request, which Simon's just dealt with. There's also a survey coming forward, which you will be receiving, on the best timing for national events arranged by NASICA, particularly consulting teachers as to when it would be best for them for things like the national conference, the annual conference to be held. So that will be coming through. And another development is that on the website for NASICA, there is now a sharing page, which I have yet to look at, in which SACREs and other organisations can share news, information, good practice, resources, things like that. Yes, just to report that the online CPD programme has proved very successful and will be continuing into the next academic year. A very good take-up, and if I can make a private comment, an additional source of income for NASICA as well. It makes a slight profit, which is all to the good. But again, it's to some extent enabled by that central person, Claire Clinton, who's the advisor for Newham, or has been. Well, I think she still is, but she's also the national promoter of the system of RE hubs, regional hubs, that are going forward. Yes, and another note from the briefing, there's this concern about RE teacher recruitment and retention, and the comment is that the situation in secondary schools for secondary teachers of RE is at crisis point. And we take note of that very seriously. The Association of University Lecturers of RE, ALRE, is campaigning about this, and others will be joining in that campaign towards central government. And my final point here, that's from the briefing here, that NASICA is involved in and is helping to promote this. The Religious Education Council wants feedback on its draft materials of resourcing religion and worldviews. The REC has produced a draft resource book for teaching religion and worldviews, and it's asking for feedback about that from teachers. Whether anybody is actually picking this up in Staffordshire, I don't know at the moment, but they are looking for that. And it's all part of this dialogue, if you like, around RE at the moment, which is very active. It's as active now about the nature of RE, the purpose of RE, the methods of RE, as any time I've known, to be honest. So that's report from NASICA. Any questions, any comments from anyone?
if when we put the call out to anybody who wants to attend the conference, if nobody comes forward, then I would be willing to attend on our behalf, but it's up to everybody else. So I will wait and hear.
And Mary wouldn't be the first advisor who goes to these conferences by any means. Quite a number of the exec on NASICA first appeared as advisors, yes. And some still are. We move on to item 7, the agreed syllabus launch information update. Before we move into the item here, which I'm hoping that Mary and Simon will lead, I think we ought to be briefed about where the agreed syllabus has got to in the legal process, and Simon's going to say more.
Okay, so the agreed syllabus, or the approval, acceptance of the agreed syllabus, whichever word we choose to use, is a delegated decision with the Cabinet member, so that's Councillor Price. So we obviously received the agreed syllabus in the new year, and the process started formally. So it goes through a few layers of approval, then it goes to the scrutiny chairman, committee and chair, and the shadow cabinet leader. Excuse me. So we're at that stage at the moment. Once it's gone through, that's a formality really, just for them to have a look through and to decide if they're happy with the agreed syllabus as it was. Then we go through a call-in process, which is just a short period of time to allow other members to have a look at, and if they have any issues, they can raise those. And once that's approved, we are good to go. So we are in that process at the moment. It did start, I think it was 10 days ago or so. And I am on top of that, so I'm just looking at stage 3 at the moment, which is good for us to push through. But don't worry, there are 11 stages, but don't be concerned that we're only at stage 3. It is quite a quick process. It's just about keeping on top and making sure that the people who are supposed to be doing their element have done that. But it is going through that process now.
I had no idea it was so complicated. Obviously, there are various safeguards that you have to follow to make sure due process is carried out. But have we got some idea of when the final date for it to have been approved by the county, adopted by the county, will be?
The answer to that is no, because if it's called in, that could cause an issue in terms of delivery. And I know you're working towards a date of the 27th of February, which is the date that I'm obviously working towards. Well, not that date, I'm working towards getting something beforehand. But the call-in process there is always a risk, but I genuinely don't think there'll be an issue with the agreed syllabus for legislation.
No, just to comment, as Simon says, there can be delays, and if at a key point there was a serious objection, the agreed syllabus could be sent back to the SACRE, and the agreed syllabus conference might have to be reconvened. But nobody seems to have thought or wanted to raise any objection at the moment. And in terms of the actual launch event, in the absence of any problem, the launch event can go ahead, it seems to me, whether or not the final approval has been given.
Yes.
Because in terms of what happens in schools, our kind of understanding is that it will not become statutory in schools until September this year.
That's where I was going to go with this, because obviously you are doing a launch period, which is good, but obviously it's not officially being taken in schools until September. So if there are some tweaks that are requested, first and foremost, it would need to come back to SACRE. That would need to be discussed. It couldn't just be a decision that somebody makes and says, right, we need to change this. There has to be a discussion, and there has to be a reason why that would take place. And then obviously it would come back here and we'd go through the agreed syllabus process, conference, and then back to SACRE, and then back to the authority. But we are, as I say, you've done this before, and it's gone through before. So I'm not concerned that something's going to all of a sudden jump out here, but better to be on the safe side, really.
So if all goes to plan, cross fingers, we're hoping to launch the agreed syllabus at the Entrust building on Monday, the 27th of February. at 2 o'clock. It is all written down on page 17 of agenda item 7. The marketing department at Intrust very kindly sent out invitations to schools to ask would they be interested in attending. Normally, we don't have a lot of replies, but they put my name on the reply slip, and to date we have 73 schools stating that they wish to attend a launch, which is unheard of, actually, in Staffordshire for an event such as this. So we're all crossing our fingers that we can't cancel it. And those schools, interestingly, some of those are the schools I've contacted, the high schools and the middle schools, about the fact that they seem to be not teaching religious studies or religious education. So that's good. So they're coming to hear a bit more about it. I've had one saying, I don't understand why there needs to be a launch of such a syllabus when we're a high school, and by law we do not have to teach these things that primary school teaches. So I've had to very clearly indicate to that school that it is actually the law, as stated, and it would be lovely for them to attend, and they have said they would now be attending as they were more aware of the rules and regulations. So this launch, if it happens, is actually absolutely raising the profile of religious education, religious studies in Staffordshire. So that's great. And even if we had to have a launch on the draft one, I think it still would be worthwhile, because we could give out the legislation. I mean, Cabinet cannot change legislation of that nature, so we could give them all of the background, the detail, and the planning that is in the agreed syllabus is actually the planning starting from September. So they've got things to look at ahead of the time. I can't think that they would actually change the example planning, even if they change some of the wording. So I'm hopeful that that will go ahead. The only thing I'm a bit unhopeful is the health and safety regulations at Intrust, or the thought of it's going to be nearly 100 people in the conference hall. So I'm waiting to hear back from them, once again, about the logistics. And so my question to you is, what do you think should be seen at the launch? Do you have any ideas? I've got ideas, but they're my ideas. What would you think would be suitable for these? Are many head teachers and RE teachers. Thank you, Sean. Your Tracy is coming. I have her. Yes. I have her on the list.
I think, if I may, Mary, just throw in one quickly.
Yes.
I think there must be visible diversity, if I can put it like that. Visible in terms of representation of other faiths and other communities than, if you like, the indigenous, traditional indigenous community. And also pupil involvement wherever possible. In whatever ways possible, but that adds to the numbers, of course.
It does. So, of course, I'd be looking to a school that was very musical to possibly provide a minibus with some children in who could sing perhaps a song to us. So, Sean.
I'm sure a lot of schools would be happy to do that. A lot, not just one.
Yes.
Well, yes, but it's the time issue and the logistics and the...
Yes.
So one school would be enough,
Yes.
I think, to start with.
What popped into my mind when you mentioned this was some evidence of the West Hill project.
Yes, we could ask the MIAS team to put together an exhibition. Yes.
Or have some children talking about their experiences,
Okay.
of which the diversity should be obvious.
Yeah.
And would the MIAS team be interested or available, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, I think your timing is ideal because it's the Monday after
Half term.
half term,
Yeah.
which might well be used as an inset day anyway.
Yes.
So more teachers will be able
Yeah.
to attend.
Is that fortuitous or planned, Mary?
That was planned.
Okay.
So good ideas there. So you're saying some children doing something, children speaking. Do you think it's a good idea for everybody to have a copy of the draft agreed syllabus? I mean, if you're going to a launch, do you need to physically hold it?
I think that would be a really good idea because it means that everyone walking away is then at the same level playing field. Everyone's walking away with the same information at the
Yeah.
end of the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had a quote for 100 copies of the agreed syllabus in colour. We have got the money for this. It would be just over £500 because paper costs.
Send them out electronically.
Pardon?
Send them out electronically.
We could send it out electronically, yes.
Do they need a paper copy? Or ask if people particularly want a paper copy?
Yeah.
Don't waste it on those who don't need
I was going to say, if we've already got contact with those who've said they're coming, maybe ask if they want, if it's like an opt-in situation, like ask them if they'd like a paper copy when they attend the event, and then they can decide whether they want a paper copy or an electronic copy.
We could do a data pen with the agreed syllabus on it, where they have a little data pen, and it would have the presentation on there, because we've got to have a presentation, and we could have and then the agreed syllabus, the draft one, as it would still be called at that point, if we hadn't heard, could be on a data pen, and everybody receives a free data pen. That's another way of doing it.
I know sustainability isn't necessarily something that we talk about a lot, but actually approaching it from a sustainable point of view, a data pen would be really, really good in terms of sustainability, but also everyone's then got it and then we've got to like look around a big pile of paper and it's sort of level across the playing field. And as you say, you can include the presentation then. So for those who maybe won't be able to attend the launch event, they can still receive the same information and not have to hear it secondhand from those who attend.
Okay, so we've got some ideas there.
I'm reflecting on what you've just said, Amy, and it may be the way I think, and it differs from generation to generation. But one of the features about the agreed syllabus, to me, is that it is an entity, and actually to have it as a physical entity reinforces, I think, its status, rather than it just being online and up in the cloud somewhere. Do you understand what I mean? You can handle it, it exists, it's a real thing.
So,
I totally get what you're on about. I mean, in terms of like reading, like children still need real books to learn to read as much as we've got ebooks. So to have like a physical copy of the syllabus sort of makes it seem real and tangible. I totally get where you're coming from.
Simon.
Sorry, just to stick my oar in. If it's draft, I think giving someone a paper copy of a draft version is a dangerous game in terms they'll take that away and they'll use that. So having an electronic version then I think is a good thing. There's always a risk with a paper copy. There's the old saying that it pops on the shelf and it gathers dust, or it stops your table from wobbling. I think nowadays a lot of people do use things more online, so perhaps the question of do you want a copy of this? We can. The issue is that if you print 50 copies off, because 50 people have asked for it and 100 people turn up, the 50 people who pick it up will be the 50 people who haven't asked for a copy of it, because they'll just see it and they'll take it. So I think it's either one for all or one way or the other. I know I haven't helped in terms of whether it's whether you should have a printed copy or not, but if it's still draft, I think that's where the risk is.
No, I'm persuaded that people should be given the opportunity to download it and print it if they want to, and it'll be primarily online. I'm happy with that.
So do you want me to provide data pens with all the information on in a small presentation envelope with the Sacre logo on the front, something along those lines?
Okay.
Yes? And perhaps on a presentation table, a few copies of the actual one itself.
That's
If
right.
somebody is saying, oh, I don't access things through email anymore, I need a paper copy, and we'd have to say this is draft, use it at your peril. So a combination, perhaps.
I think having paper copies on like a presentation table would be good, because then they can take the data pen with them, but then the paper copies they can flick through and sort of get a rough, brief idea of like what's included in the syllabus, and then they take the data pen away, and then they can choose whether they print it off or not. Especially if we're going to be possibly presenting a draft copy, it means like, you know, they're not going to have a draft copy and sort of run with that, as you were saying. Like they got access to both.
Sean, what do you think schools would like?
I think the option of having a copy of the syllabus, I mean, I was thinking a QR code, but I mean, if you stick it on a memory stick, that's absolutely fine to take away. You know, even to the point of having, if you haven't got children there, to have some kind of involvement of children would be useful, even if it's virtual. So they've been filmed, or they're talking about RE, or they're talking about what they do. You know, if it's on iPad so people can see it, or it's on a PowerPoint presentation so children have got some input into it, because it's what we're doing it for, really. So that's what I would say.
Okay, so I might be coming to you for that, possibly,
fine.
to do a little bit of something, and then I could talk to some of the children who've been doing the MIAS project, and perhaps we could combine the two and put the presentation on and say this is what we've found from the children of Staffordshire. The voice is not our voice, it's their voice, because they are the future, aren't they? So, yeah. Oh, thank you. Great ideas.
We look forward to this event, which happens every so often, every few years, and we want it to be an uplifting and buoyant sort of occasion. So we look forward to it, and we hope there'll be support from members of SACRE as well.
Yes.
Mary, you're going to pull it all together.
I am in the middle of it.
Do you want to...
I need to know if you wish to attend. So if you wish to attend the launch, could you either let me know or Simon? Simon, you're all right with that, aren't you?
Yeah.
What time was it again, please?
2 o'clock. And I've said 2 hours maximum.
I'm committed to the special committee here, so please accept my apology.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
But thank you for being forward thinking, and
Just to confirm, is it being held at Entrust?
Pardon?
Is it being held at Entrust?
It's at Entrust because there's parking.
Okay.
That is such a major thing these days, isn't it? And there's disabled parking very close by as well.
If you
Yeah,
keep...
unfortunately, I have to send my apologies as well.
Okay,
But
Judy.
I do appreciate that you've taken that into account as well, so thank you very much for
You're
that.
welcome.
I just hope that Entrust and the joint venture has got itself sorted out by then.
I will keep badgering as I keep emailing them every other day.
Well, you're still technically...
Oh, I am still technically in this role until I'm told. That March the 31st is the official stop date of my contract anyway.
Yeah, if you could keep me in touch with the planning.
And Michael, I'm presuming you would want Michael to do a bit of a keynote speech as the chair.
Or Councillor Price, if you
Oh,
think.
and Council, and, not or, and, yes, Councillor Price.
Yeah.
So we would need to inform him of the
Could you do
date of the launch. That might push it forward a bit. His,
And get good publicity out afterwards
yes,
in the press.
yes, get the press, yeah.
On to agenda item 8. Many of us will have picked up the statistics that have been in the papers recently. Mary has given a bit of a digest here, and in some ways the figures speak for themselves. But I would also say that as a sort of undercurrent to the figures, I think it is quite important that RE continues to provide pupils with some understanding of Christianity as being the ideology, if you like, the faith, the network of ideas and perspectives which has shaped this country in the past and which continues to have its resonances in the present, although people don't always recognise them or be aware of them. So I think it is important that the present guidance about RE is maintained in spite of or alongside these figures about a decline in formal religion as a whole. Mary.
Yes, if you look on page 20, just halfway down, it says religions in the United Kingdom, Christianity is still 46.2%. And I know a lot of people think there are, you know, we're becoming more of a Muslim country, but actually, if you look at the figures, it's only 6.5% are, you know, recognizing themselves as Islam, as Muslims within the Islam community. So I say there is still hope for Christianity with those figures at 46.2. I think when you see them like that, I feel hopeful that if we can enthuse and champion the current generation within our schools, that if we could just maintain that for the next decade, we would be doing a really good job. I don't know what anybody else thinks about the figures. The increase in paganism is quite interesting, at 74,000, but of course that's not even a percentage. That's 0 point something percent. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about what is defined as Christian, because, you know, you can find that there's going to be a far smaller percentage who are practicing Christians to those who are defining themselves as Christians, and that applies both to Church of England Catholics primary schools as well, Catholic high schools. So baptised Catholics, for example, in the school that we feed into, statistics are showing that the percentage of baptised Catholics who are practicing is also in decline. They are Catholics by name, but maybe not Catholics in the sense that they're practicing.
Less than 50% of
Yes.
I think for me, Chairman, I think the increase of people who reporting no religion, I think, is worrying.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything, the launch that you're having where we're talking about religious education in schools should at least be a catalyst to start to see that number perhaps in the future reduced down as children do get religious education taught to them in schools, hopefully.
I was thinking within the presentation of using these figures, because a lot of people say, why are we teaching about Christianity when a lot of people do not identify as Christians? Well, this is actually a database. It might not be identifying practicing Christians, but those people who feel Christianity has a base or a foundation or a scaffolding of some of the aspects of their life. So it is worthy of, I think it's worthy of note, because the press seems to say the complete opposite. It's just when you see the figures like that, you know, and I'm forever an optimist. I've always been an optimist and look on the bright side. Amy?
I think it's interesting to see the term irreligion rather than like no religion.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe it's people, and this is just like a broad assumption, people not being sure where to label their faith. I think there's been a move away from organised religion as such, people wanting to sort of branch out on their own of where their faith lies. I notice, like, in my work with children and families, yes, I'm in a faith-based setting, working for the Salvation Army, but I still see a lot of people throughout the week who come into our building, access our services, who I don't think they would label themselves Christian, but yet they are interacting with a Christian organisation and interacting with the work that we do. So I think the term irreligion's really interesting, because maybe in that group are people who access Christian-based services or access other Christian-based groups or other faith-based groups, but just don't know where to put themselves. Yeah.
If I understand correctly, Amy, the word irreligion here is just a convenient word which doesn't appear in the census nor in the reports of the census, as I understand it. The category is no religion, and people put no religion because they didn't want to identify with a specific religious organisation of those that were listed, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And I quite agree that alongside the people who did want to sign up and say they identified with this religious group or that religious group or that non-religious group, there were many people who said, I don't want to be categorised in that narrow way, so I've got to say no religion. And people are exploring. There's a lot of evidence of very few people, a limited number of people, as it says here, willing to sign up as atheists or humanists who take a particular non-religious stance. Sorry, Councillor.
I mean, there are arguments going to Catholic Church now. We started in 1964 after Vatican II with Ratzinger and another German philosopher. Are you a Catholic because you live a Catholic life morally, or just because you believe you're a Catholic? And of course, Ratzinger then became the Pope. We've now got the current Pope, and that discussion is still going on now. Are you a Catholic because you live the life, or because you believe you are? And it's the same with religion in general, I'm sorry.
Statistics depend very much on the kind of categories and how well they're defined and how people respond to those. And they're not, if I can use this, they're not an absolutely a kind of authoritative Bible, are they? They need interpreting, and they need an understanding of exactly what's actually being claimed or stated. Yes.
And it is, as you say, it's how people choose to answer the religion question. It's how that has been chosen. And some people didn't even fulfill in the census report at all, did they? So there's another group out there.
Having said that, obviously these figures have got some substance to them, and behind this, which isn't shown, is the question of the age profile within each of the religious groups. And there's no doubt that if we were to look at the Muslim community and the age profile there, that would have a very sharp contrast with the age profile, for instance, for Christianity. So that's another factor.
So I thought it would be interesting to have this information brought to you in a summary format, because the reports in the press are, they're quite extensive. So I've just tried to gather as much information to give you it, as I say, in the summary format.
All right.
Can I raise a question? Sorry. So for some of these other religious groups like pagan and Wicca, they don't necessarily have a structured church as such like Christianity does. So in terms of Sacra, are they represented in terms of members?
Sacre has a constitution which is agreed by the local authority, and Sacre can ask for changes to its constitution which have to be agreed by the local authority and in consultation with the relevant representative bodies in the public sphere. And at the moment, we do have a place for a humanist, which has been voted in by Sacre and agreed by the council, but nobody is filling it. We actually have a Baha'i representative as well, a space for a Baha'i representative, but that's not filled. But some of the other groups have not approached us or have not been considered for representation. These are public meetings, technically, and there's nothing to stop any member of the public sitting in on the meetings but not being allowed to speak, unless being deliberately allowed to by agreement of the chair and the meeting itself. But we have had people who've sat in, if you like, have been co-opted onto the Sacre and have been allowed to speak as representatives under permission from the chair and take part in the proceedings before becoming officially part of the constitution. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, but just through you, so you're aware, we do have a humanist representative who has sent his apologies whilst we were in the meeting. His car failed its MOT. so he isn't able to get here. That's Ian Horswell. So he didn't attend the last meeting, but he has.
An unknown known.
So there we go.
On to agenda item 9. Mary, do you want to say a little bit about these resources for supporting our agreed syllabus?
We know that if we launch, or when we launch the agreed syllabus, people will be saying, well, where are the resources? What can we buy? What is free? What's available? So what I've tried to do here is put some suggestions together of some resources, some of which are free for our schools, because we know money is tight. They're not all excellent, but they all and each and every one has merits to them. And just as you would if you were teaching the geography curriculum or the history curriculum or a maths curriculum, you would look at these resources and you would choose the one that best suited your own school community and the needs of your community or the needs of your higher achievers or your disadvantaged pupils. So here I've given a few examples. The first one is the big ideas. And this is quite new. It's web-based curriculum for religious education. And I've given the links here. And I did wonder whether at the launch I could provide this information as well, because we didn't have in the agreed syllabus at the present moment, we haven't put a resources section because we were going to develop this. So this is just a start, if you like, to start developing that section. We've referenced the Culham St Gabriel's e-learning platform. So that's a charity which provides money for schools to look at resources and build up their own resource banks. And they also have grants to help and support schools. Then there's the RE Today, which is the NATRE, Natural Association of Teachers Religious Education. They provide some free resources, but a lot of it has to be purchased. But there are, thousands of online resources in their bank. Then we've got early years resources, written mostly by somebody called Jill Vasey, who's instrumental in Wales, and she's written the curriculum for all Welsh schools to do with religious studies, because they've changed the name of religious education in Wales to, I think it's Religious Studies and Worldviews. Religious and religion and
values and world views or something
yes. Like that. So Jill has produced some booklets. Then there's another section called the Bible Stories, which are amazing PowerPoints, which are all free for schools to use. And there's the Oak Academy, which has got the first lesson in any subject to do with religious education, but they're not perfect. But if you've got an early career teacher who's uncertain of how to start teaching about Islam, then the first lessons are all there, and the quizzes to actually assess children at the end of that first lesson, they're all there within that Oak Academy. So these are just some ideas, and afterwards, if any of you've got some time, you've got the electronic version, you might want to just explore or share some of this. And if you've got grandchildren, the one about Bible stories is amazing. The graphics are absolutely amazing for the children to learn about, Old Testament stories in particular. Yeah. And then we've got the bite size, which I've missed off, which is the BBC for religious education, which has many short films where children explore how they feel about their own religious feelings and champion the religion that they actually belong to. So I just thought I would share those with you and see if there were any comments or if anybody'd had a chance to look at any of them prior to the meeting.
I haven't. Yeah. As Mary says, the support of the agreed syllabus needs a resources section, but this isn't technically a part of the syllabus itself, so we can add to it and build it up as we go. Well, thank you to Mary for that, all that supportive work there. Thank you very much. we move on to the current budget, which is largely just a statement of where we are at the moment.
There's money available, and Interest have access to this money, which they can spend with regard to the MIAS team, Minority Ethnic Achievement Service. They are able to, with YouthNet, and we provide the money to pay for them to go into schools to carry out their workshops on Explore, Engage, Reflect on the agreed syllabus. I've also been able to access some additional money to support schools, which has been worthwhile. And for the launch, we've been allocated £1,000 from the budget, and the only way I could actually access this money this time was through purchase order numbers, which I've sorted. I've gone through the minefield. And actually, now that I know the system, in future it might be quite an interesting way of resourcing certain aspects to do with the agreed syllabus and going forward with SACRE. Because if you have a sum of money available and Entrust are not able to facilitate that, then it might be that you have a service level agreement with an advisor and it's met through a purchase order number. But I'm just thinking of other ways around a problem at the moment.
If I understand the layout here, Mary, the budget total available with a figure of in bold of £6,000 plus pounds, and then the figures below add up to nearly £6,000 and mean that we will have spent that budget, more or less.
Which is good news, because in the past we've had carry forwards that's disappeared into the ether. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you very much. And we move on now to the final item, which is the SACRE Development Plan and Agreed Syllabus Plan, complete with RAG ratings on the right, and it's all looking good. There's just one or two ambers which are not causing any problems at all. Particularly, we're concerned with the progress of the agreed syllabus, which has been a major piece of work, and that's more or less seen through now. What comes to mind, however, is that perhaps we ought to be thinking about a development plan for the next 3 years, or perhaps 5 years, I don't know. And to take into account what will be happening as more and more schools become academies, and how that will affect our work. And that is the future.
And I was thinking perhaps when we have our next meeting, which is in June. That might be quite a big body of that work of that meeting, is to sit together and say, where are we going now that we've got the agreed syllabus? It's going to be in schools eventually. What is it? What is our plan for the future for our schools? Where are we going and what are we going to do? I think that would be a good piece of work for us all to get involved with in group discussion. And I hope you would agree, Michael, that is a good way forward. Also, succession planning as well, to think about who might the next leaders be and so on.
And we might have to try and find a way of being able to do interactive work in a room like this, which is so unsympathetic to interactive work. But we're grateful for the way in which the County Council is willing to host these meetings. But the style of our meetings has unfortunately changed a little bit by having this apparatus, this sort of formal array, and the distance of people apart and so on. So I regret that in some ways. I think that more or less brings an end, unless people wish to raise questions about the development plan. I think that brings the agenda to an end. We haven't... oh, yes, of course. You're right. This is the formal item as to whether we have had any applications for a variation in practice. In other words, a variation in practice concerning the statutory arrangements for collective worship. This has to be a standing item on each Sacre agenda. I can say that I have not received any applications for such variation, therefore there is nothing to discuss. And there being no declared other business, I thank you very much for your attendance, participation, particularly the support of the councillors, and we look forward to the launch and to our next meeting next term. Gabby. In Entrust.
Entrust.
At the Entrust headquarters on Riverside. Do you know the building? Oh, it's this monstrous square block that sits on the river.
Just past the Polish Club.
The other side of the river to the Polish Club. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, everybody knows the Polish Club. So thank you all very much. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.